Alrighty guys, welcome to the Ultimate Beginner Miner's Guide. This will help everyone out as we're going to go through all the steps in mining for out of ore. So sit back and enjoy guys, and make sure to like and subscribe the video as I have a lot of tutorials and a lot of helpful things. And if there isn't something that you see that you want to see, make sure to leave a comment down below and I'll try and get around to that as quickly as I can. So sit back and relax and enjoy this nice little beginner's guide. So we're going to be starting where everyone is going to start at, and that is your machinery. Now, everything that I'm going to say in this video I want to preface with how you want to play the game is to yours only. If you want to play it on a more simulation based, you can, or if you want to play it more arcadey and fast and make more money, you can also do that. And in this video I'm going to be playing both sides, so that way both sides get an understanding of how to do so. So now with our machinery here, we have all the basic machinery. Actually we don't have rock trucks up here. Oh yeah, they're in use. We have pretty much all the basic machinery that you're going to want when you start. Obviously you're not going to need all this, especially depending on the amount of players in your game, but the fastest way to grow and play the game arcadey and make money quickly when you first start out is actually by just taking a loader straight into your wash plant, as that way you only need to get one machine and it has a lot higher bucket capacity than these excavators do, and it's just a lot faster all around to just use a loader straight into your wash plant when you first begin. Now on the other hand, you can put a rock truck in between that if you wanted to. I wouldn't really recommend it. If you want to use a rock truck, just use an excavator with it. It's not as fast, but it's a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a simulation mine video coming up, so it's a lot of fun to use the small equipment even when you have the big equipment. So that's the quickest way to really start mining in the beginning, is just with a loader. And now, since we're moving that into our plants, let's talk about the wash plants a little bit. Now this is a very simple single lane system that a lot of people will work up in their early days of mining. This is actually the exact one that I had over there in that region. I moved it up here into the bird's nest because I want to use this area as like a storage. That's why all this equipment's up here and a couple other little plants. So this was the original plant that I had before. I took off a couple of conveyors because it just looked wonky sitting up here with it. But this isn't exactly what you want in the beginning for a lot of reasons. To one, your sorter you don't really actually need. Everything can run through everything, so don't really worry about that too much. You can just run a wash plant and then a trommel afterwards, so that way it would look a little bit like this. This is 5 lanes, 6 lanes. This is 6 systems, but just having one of these lines, wash plant to a trommel, this way all of your dirt is going to come out of your bottom line and all of your good ores will come out of your top line. So that way it's nice and sorted and doesn't look like this where you have your dirt mixed in with all the good stuff. And on top of that, you can auto sell everything out the bottom of this by putting a chute and a sell point under it. And this is on a much larger scale, but your chute into a sell point would look a little bit something like this, where you can see our top lines come into our refinery building here, and then our bottom lines go through a asphalt plant, so that way any gravel gets turned into asphalt, and then it goes up into the air a little bit more with a chute on top, so that way I can easily line up where our sell points need to go. This way I don't have to touch any dirt or coal. Now if you wanted to keep coal, put a conveyor sorter on the end of this, but if you don't want to keep coal, you can just have it sell like this as well. That way you're not having to deal with any of the dirt, and it'll make your lives a lot nicer. And on top of this, don't use mergers or splitters. We got a dummy clone of myself here looking at this in awe. Don't use mergers and splitters. I know a lot of you probably have already or have been tempted to. It's not good, as the mergers bottleneck everything, as it'll take, everything moves at 30 ticks per second. So it'll take 2 30s and put in 1 30, so this takes twice as long to process. If you want to understand it more, I have a quick 3-minute video about everything about that, so go ahead and check that out. And splitters will just take 130 and put it into 215 lines, so you're actually going to double how much you spend to process the same amount as one lane. Now what's really important with these lanes is obviously you don't have to go and right off the bat build a big ass 5-lane, 6-lane system, build it to your needs. If you're using one of these loaders, you could probably get away with just 2. And when you're feeding your plant, I wouldn't recommend feeding into the hoppers the long ways. I would feed it from this end here. So you would put them side by side like over here and feed directly into their ends. This way the material isn't being fed mostly into one, it'll be fed across the many. This way everything will run a lot faster and a lot nicer. Now we've headed down to our simulation mine here, as your cut isn't going to look like that off the beginning. It'll look a lot more like this. This is the original cut that was opened up here on this simulation mine. And this obviously isn't the original plant. Like I said, the original plant was up there in the bird's nest and storage. So for your guys' cut, what's really important to know about the game is the dirt and the pay dirt. Now the pay dirt is this lighter brown material and the dirt is the darker brown material. On the older maps such as Forest, there is just layers to everything. You can't really see it from here. There's a solid dirt layer, and then there's a solid pay dirt layer, and then there's a solid bedrock layer. Now, there is also random iron and coal ores mixed within this, but it's very nice and easy to just have a lot of pay dirt at your plethora, as once you get below this dirt layer, it's just pay dirt. Now, how thick the dirt layer does change depending on where you're at, but on newer maps such as Scandinavia is what I call a pudding map, where it isn't solid layers, it's just kind of all mixed together. So you gotta be mindful of what kind of map you want to start on. Scandinavia, which is a little bit harder, or do you want to start on an older map, which is the Forest map. Now I know that there's like 8 or so maps, but really there's only 2, and the rest are reskins and different spawn areas and different starting areas. So just be mindful of that when you're picking a map of where to start. This is Forest Flat. Our main save is on Forest Hills, but we just wanted something quick and easy to mine, so we went to Forest Flat. This is the very first starting area, and then our cut is just right up behind it. Now, when you're stripping cuts, using the dozer is very useful. One thing to be mindful of is I am always adjusting the blade when using the dozer, and to not have it fully tipped forward. I typically keep mine a little bit past halfway backwards, so that way it leaves a decent enough finish on the ground. Another way to do this is just by stripping with loaders. I think is what we're going to start doing. But just a really important thing is where you're getting your ground from. Starting in a nice flat area. I mean, this was decently flat when I started. It wasn't the greatest area though to start in. And then knowing where the pay dirt really is really important as well. Now on top of all this is the layout of your mine. This cut wasn't really well thought out when I made it. It has just 2 ramps at the end right there going into our cut. It's a decent layout but not entirely great. On our mine that we're running right now, our ramps are several with the length of the cut. This way our trucks have many entry and exit points from different orientations. They can go through that way or they can go through that way. That way, when we're running multiple trucks, no one's getting hung up, or it's just not a mess. As well, when we go down a layer, our ramps down will be running this way. So we will have a lot of extra room, and we could even corner it if we want. But to be fair, in the beginning, you might not be going down multiple layers, but if you do, a setup like this wouldn't really be that great, because there isn't a whole lot of rooms with how the ramps are orientated to bring it down without eating up a lot of space within the cut. I recommend, if you're running something small like this, to have your ramp on the outside and running in. That way, if you do go down a layer, it's not going to eat up what limited space you already have, and it'll make your whole area a lot nicer. Now, going on with the layout is how your hoppers are orientated with your cut. Now, on the simulation plant here, it just has an excavator feeding into the hoppers, which isn't really practical if you're wanting to play the game really arcadey, but if you want it simulation wise, then go for it. But it isn't great for the rat trucks, as they'll have to make multiple turns to dump in front of the excavator. Whereas something with our loader operation, which it's this one, with our loader operation here, our hoppers run parallel with the direction that they're going. This way they don't have to turn around 100%, and it makes their lives a lot easier to dump into the plants. Now, that is something to think about for how you're running your operation with the space that you have, the area that you're going, the direction that you're going, and what kind of machinery you are using to think of how you want to lay out your mine. Now, it's something that a lot of people don't really think of, and they just kind of go for it and wing it, and that does work sometimes, but a lot of times you'll run into a lot more problems than you'd really want, so it's a lot better to think it all out in the beginning, beforehand. You can take this for example. You can see here when I've placed this first set of hoppers, I didn't line it up straight with the wall, and we're actually running into the wall right there, so we're gonna have to kind of cockeye it out and then continue forward. So it's really important to think about your mine layouts before you begin a new cut or a new area or a new save or whatever it may be. Now the next really important thing is your refinery. This is where you're getting all your money from, obviously. And this is a huge preference here as to how much you want to refine and what of you want to refine. Now, you can play it really arcadey based and just kind of go for money by making steel or concrete blocks. Those are really profitable, as well with steel windows and steel doors, I believe, are really profitable. But it's a really arcadey way of playing the game. But how we operate is we just smelt our ores and wash our diamonds and rubies. We don't process any concrete or any steel of any sort. We have a steel mill, but we haven't actually used it yet. And that's also on a whole different save right now. But how you want to play the game is really important for this step. Like when I began, I didn't smell any silicone. It wasn't worth the time because we were really trying to pump out money as much as we could. We had a lot of people, so we had to get a lot of machinery. Now that's another thing that I want to touch base on is when you start, how quickly do you want to make money? Do you need money ASAP to get new machinery or more machinery from more people? Or are you just a small operation and you got some time on your hands to just leave the game on overnight and not have to worry about money? Because if that is the case, you might only want 3 to 5 smelters to begin with and maybe 2 or 3 wash plants to begin with. But if you're a bigger operation, you might want 10 to 15 of each. That way you can get money quicker as you're dividing up everything throughout the whole of your refinery. So it's really important to think about how quickly you are going to need money and which areas to focus on, which is actually our next subject, is focusing on different areas in your mine growth. When I first began, our refinery was a huge focus of growth as we needed money really quickly as we had to start with like 4 or 5 people. So we needed a lot of different machines for everyone. So we really focused on our refinery and that allowed us to grow very quickly. And then once we had a decently sized enough refinery, we were focusing on our cut size. We were increasing the size of our cut so that way we'd have more material to run, and eventually the size of our plant. And then size of our mine as a whole by building a small road network to a new area. And then we built a new refinery, new cuts. It's a cycle that needs to be focused is what I'm trying to get at here. You need to pick the focus for what you need most. Do you need more ground available? Do you need more money? What is it that you need? And then focus on that target area so that way your mine will prosper easier. Now that is another thing that's a little bit more arcadey. I wouldn't say it's so much arcade though to simulation as it is kind of the whole aim of the game to grow your mine and whatnot. So really just focus on how you want your mine to grow and which areas you're struggling in so that way you can correct that and focus on that area. Now picking your people is also a really strong ability that you have with the Discord servers. Finding new players is really important. We get a lot of one-off people in the mine that just come in for one session and that's completely fine, and then we have regulars that come back often, but having both is really important, and finding out where their strong suit is and utilizing that is really important as well. Right now we have around 4 to 5 excavator operators and around 6 loader guys, and then obviously everyone can run a rock truck or a roller. So utilizing people's abilities is really important in the game. This building here, for example, I didn't build this. I didn't want to make another refinery after starting a new save, so I put 3 people on it that had never built a building before, like literally never done it in the game before, and they did an amazing job with it for their first time. I'm really happy with how it came out. So throwing people into the mix to learn new things is really important. And obviously don't force them to do so. I took volunteers and they all did a great job with it. And if I skipped over anything that you guys might want in more detail, make sure to leave a comment down below and I will be sure to correct that. I believe I covered everything from the machinery to your cuts to your layout to your wash plant and to how you focus your mind, as all these are really key beginner details that really aren't covered in the tutorial little video that you get. So make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell if I post any more tutorials, so that way you are in the know, and have a good one.